NPH Hour is back on News Talk, Saga 960 AM. I'm your host, Jason Tom. Thank you for joining us once again in our little slice of the airwaves, podcast land, and the North Pole Hoops YouTube channel. Basketball is back in full swing here in Canada at the grassroots level. We've had the Jane and Finch Classic just wrap up, while the NPH rep circuit is operating out of the Burlington Playground facility. And to talk about that and more is North Pole Hoops lead scout, Efe Ashakah. Efe, generally speaking, after over a year and a half away from the game, for a lot of kids, coaches, and their parents, what are you seeing and hearing both on the court and off the court now that basketball has finally returned?
I think everyone is just kind of happy to be back in the gyms. With games going on, you can tell the energy is really high. We can start with the Jane and Finch. So this past weekend, I don't know if it was just me, but everyone seemed to like angry. Like maybe it's just like a Toronto kind of thing or whatever, but guys getting in each other's faces, the trash talk was at an all-time high, it felt like. It was very physical as well. So I enjoyed that thoroughly, being in the gym itself. And then on the rep circuit side, everyone's just kind of, they're happy. Like we have a couple teams in there, Quebec teams who kind of bring that grittiness and toughness. But it's funny, like the Halton region, which is kind of known or would be known maybe to be kind of softer. It's not as gritty, not as tough, but these guys they've hung in. They've done a pretty good job. So I've enjoyed it. There's been a lot of gems that have popped up, and basketball's back.
Yeah, one thing I was curious to think of, because we had so many people wanting to get back. I mean, it's not surprising to me that the players are a little amped up and maybe playing, with a little bit more edge to them. But are the people happy to have it back? I mean, I was hoping that after this time away, there would maybe be a little bit more togetherness and people willing to kind of give others some grace. Because, I mean, in the end of it, the people who are operating these things as well, including yourself, it's been a year and a half away from doing that as well. So, I mean, there are some things that still need to be worked out on the operation side as well, right?
I feel like in general, just kind of starting off or closing out the summer, people are missing the boat a little bit. Instead of kind of celebrating the fact that basketball is back, I think we've kind of just, it's not gone overboard, but it's just so much on the competitive side. Like people are still in that mindset instead of just kind of being like, wow, like, it's so great to finally be back in here. I think we could just do a better job just communicating and kind of just understanding that nothing will be perfect right away. But as time moves on, like on both sides, whether it be people on the operations side or the coaches and the players, we can all get better as time moves on.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's like practicing what you preach as well, right? Especially for us as adults. And we've heard this a lot of times about having to make sure that we put on a good precedent for the kids that are coming behind us. And a lot of times, either as mentors, as coaches, you always preach communication and seeing the good in others and trying to help people along and that sort of thing. And I find sometimes we don't practice what we preach. And I think that's incredibly important for everybody to keep in their mind when they're heading into these events, to keep that in mind, have some grace and maybe a thank you to the people who are putting it on for what they're doing as well. And
patience. And patience is another thing as well, right? This is still a growing community. So it's like people are kind of getting used to just having like the live events and the scouts in the gym and the coaches and just this new generation of recruitment and the way we kind of go about basketball here. So everyone's got to take a deep breath, and just at the end of the day, it's basketball.
It's
right?
Just basketball,
it's
man.
Just basketball.
It's just basketball, and everyone's going to be okay. And I think that's the top priority. Are you seeing a lot of rust on players that maybe didn't get to go down to the U.S. and are now back in game action for the first time? And I'm going to steal this from Kayla Alexander, the senior women's national team. Give yourself some grace. So players out there, if you're not as great as you think you should be, give yourself some grace. It's going to take some time to get back into game flow, right?
Yeah, I think for one, there's guys who just didn't have the resources. So they couldn't there wasn't a gym next to them, or there wasn't an available basketball court. Or for a lot of the time, actually during the pandemic, basketball courts were kind of they were locked off. If you're not training, you're you're picking up weight. So guys are out of shape and they're trying to play themselves back into shape, right? And on the so we do the mentorship stuff with parents and kids who have questions, and a lot of them have kind of come back and they're just like, okay, have we missed out on anything? We haven't played competitive basketball in over a year. We can't replicate live games in the backyard. So what have we missed, and what are we going to do about it? And it's kind of just like, you're good, be patient with it, stay with it, and there'll be plenty of opportunity in the coming months. Heading towards the long term and getting back into game ready shape.
Yeah, and I mean, we've heard in the mainstream media this whole line, the golden age of Canadian basketball, and why I never really liked that is because it kind of suggested that there's an ending to all this great talent coming out of Canada. But am I wrong in thinking as these classes move along, we're only getting better, more athletic?
I'm walking around the gyms and I see them and I'm like, I don't believe that kid's a grade 10. Like, I don't believe he's a grade 9. Like I'm not a short guy. I'm like 6'2", 6'3". So if I'm looking at you or up to you, it's like, all right, like you're a monster at that point. It's a lot different than what we've been accustomed to, even with, I guess, our age difference in terms of the guys we've seen around us who've played basketball at a high level. So it's very scary. The skill level is very high too. It's different now. Like, guys are putting in work with their older brothers who used to play, and trainers from the 6th, 7th grade, maybe younger, right? So they're coming in, and when they're playing like on a rep circuit, Jane Finch Classic, and then ultimately until like prep or high school, like it's very different. Guys are doing different things that at a younger age that we didn't used to see in our time.
Yeah, I mean, it's evolution, right? And we're definitely seeing it in our sport. And I think the one thing that we have to remember is for everyone to stay humble despite having this added size and added ability. I think that's the one thing in all the college coaches that we speak to. They like Canadians because they're the hardest workers in the gym. They're humble and they're easy to get along with. They're great teammates. So I think as long as our younger classes don't lose that, we'll be in good shape. And let's talk about the 2021 class. I mean, here we are sitting in mid-August. Are you still getting calls from players looking for a home at the post-secondary level this season?
It's funny. More players than coaches at this point. Right. The coaches have moved on. Like, it's 2022, 2023. And you'll probably talk about this more, but it's going to bleed into 2022 with the transfer portal and everything that happened from this past year. But I'll talk to players and I'll be like, okay, you have interest from a Esports program? And they'll be like, yeah, just kind of just waiting. I'm like, why haven't you accepted it? Oh, no, I just want something better. What is better than receiving a scholarship from a hometown program? I don't understand that.
Well, and to clarify that too, and that's always been the hit on U Sports, especially here in Ontario, that they can't offer a full scholarship, right? Okay. And we get that. But, and this is something that I want to talk to you about, is we need to understand what is out there for kids at the U Sports level. And a lot of times it's the parents and the kids that need to get on that early. And I'm not going to fault like a 21 not jumping on a U Sports offer, because those guys are actually already old. They have that old style mentality, right? But the guys that I'm interested in talking to are the 16 and 17-year-olds that are still going to get hit by this pandemic pinch on graduating classes. So those are the guys I'm trying to educate to say, okay, what do you want to take? First off, does education mean anything to you? Right. And a lot of them say yes, which is good. Like, what do you want to take? Now, find what U Sports school offers that at a high level, and then try to find the ones that have a good basketball program as well. And then do your own homework and reach out to those schools and say early on, hey, coach, I know about the U Sports options and I'm interested in that. And the loyalty goes both ways, right? Because people wait on coaches to be loyal to players, but how about a player being loyal to a school? If you reach out to a school at 16 and say, hey, I've seen your team this year, they look great, I love what you do as a coach, and you guys offer what I want, like, I would love the opportunity at some time to do that. And then you start putting things together that you can save money on your education by going further away. There's bursaries for academics. There's camps these schools put on the summertime that can be used to put towards your education. And then the CEBL as well. If you're good enough to be able to be picked up in that U Sports CEBL draft, there's monies that you can make that get put into a bursary that you can use. So if you're 16 right now and you want to play basketball at the post-secondary level, you need to start understanding what pathways are there, and then you start looking at it. But I want to ask you, when you bring up that U Sports option to kids, like what's the first thing that they say?
That was going to be the next thing I say. So I don't want to point fingers and play the blame game.
Yep.
You want to find solutions, but it's like, when do we get to the point where U Sports is not the backup plan? Where it's like, if someone comes in, they offer you, or they're interested in you, you're just like, yo, this is a great option. Because everyone I talk to, like the kids I talk to answer your question, they're just like, like almost like they're above it. Like they're just better than it. Like, I have friends that play U Sports. It's cool and whatever, but it's not it. Like, I know I'm a D1 guy or whatever. Like, are you sure?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Because you have to be sure. Because what are the conversations we already have, right? Like, we'll talk to a mid to low major, and they're not asking, like, can he play at the D1 level? They're asking, is this a high major kid?
It's a high major kid.
The mid and lows want the high major.
Just in terms of like levels, like low major, mid majors, like the top U Sport, it's the same level. It's the same level. So it's like, what are we doing here? Like, I guess it's on us as a community to educate these guys more. But U Sports, like, what's going on?
No, I know. Well, I mean, it doesn't help. Like, they were already struggling in really trying to market themselves as an option, and then they were wiped out by the pandemic. Losing a year of U Sports basketball has not helped the marketability of it. But in watching the CEBL and watching U Sports players like Grant Shepard, Lloyd Pandy, TJ Lull, these guys, and some of them are obviously going back for another year. I mean, Lloyd Pandy has 2 more years. The guy's going to be a monster. So as that moves along, guys are going to really understand what the options are, and girls as well. But the thing is like, if you look, the examples are already there, right? Like the Scrub brothers, like Kaysa Keene. Like Kaysa Keene went down south for 3 years at 2 different NCAA schools and went back, and Dave Smart said, come back in with open arms. The guy wins an MVP, wins a championship, goes overseas. He's now playing at one of the highest levels overseas. And this is a guy, like, we've had him on the podcast, right? You can just DM him on Instagram and he'll talk to you about why those decisions are better. The thing is like, I just feel like we're in that in-between phase right now. And my question is, and it's not going to be answered right now here by you, but if your thought process is, I got to go D1, very often we don't have an answer past that. Okay, well, what's the next thing? Because if it's the NBA, like, we're talking a super small percentage, right? So what is the next? So that's what I try to get past. It's like, hey, so what, forget post-secondary. What's your end goal with the sport? Playing professionally, or is it playing in the NBA? If it's playing professionally, the best way for a Canadian to play professionally overseas is to play here in U Sports. Why? Because they play FIBA basketball. So if you're a Canadian and you go to the NCAA and you're not an NBA level guy, and you're going to end up having to play pro, it is much easier for you to be ready for that professional career overseas if you've now have 4 years of FIBA basketball under your belt, rather than 4 years of NCAA basketball. And hey, man, I love NCAA basketball. I get it. But it's a 30-second shot clock. It's 2 20-minute halves, right? You're being coached by coaches who have to win because they're getting paid millions of dollars to coach. So where would
they're not in the business of developing you,
right? So where would you rather go? Like, I want to go win a national championship. Cool. Okay, so what happens when you win that national championship or don't win that national championship, right? Because only one team wins a national championship. You're there for 4 years. That means you get 4 chances to be one team out of hundreds to win an NCAA championship. So when that doesn't happen, what's happening after that? Got on a little bit of a soapbox there, but hopefully you gotta educate the youth. I think the one thing that people value and that help each individual is the mental aspect of the game. And we do a great job. And in Canada, we've improved on getting exposure for guys and mixtapes and highlights on social media. That's all good to get your name out there. But when coaches sit down and watch you, when a scout like Efe sits down and watches you, it's all the other stuff. And it's all the mental fortitude that you need to show, not only to get to the next level, but then to survive at the next level.
To survive, man.
And there's always the next level. Exactly.
Always the next level. Right?
Efe Ashakah, you can find him on Twitter at ESHAKAH. Thank you for joining us here on the NPH Hour, and we will be back. I got Jamie McNeely 2-part interview coming up. He talks about it all, and that is somebody who knows all about mental fortitude. So stay with us here on the NPH Hour on News Talk Saga 960 AM.